Hi, my name is Aryaman Rtunjay. I'm a freshman at Texas High School in Washington State, and I created a convolutional neural network that accurately predicts whether a patient has Parkinson's disease at an early stage. Parkinson's disease is a brain disease that affects the central nervous system. It's estimated that there are 10 million people in the world who have PD as of 2021. With 60,000 new diagnosed patients every year, this leads to the prediction of approximately 12 million people by the year 2050 who have PD. The cost of medication for PD is $2,500, and therapeutic surgery is up to $100,000 per person. The current most widespread method to diagnose PD includes taking an MRI scan and having a doctor analyze the scan to provide a diagnosis. The MRI scan is vital for the health and safety of the patient, as the first signs of PD are in the brain, meaning a brain scan is the only feasible method for early diagnosis. However, a doctor's opinion is subject to bias, and as a result, PD is misdiagnosed 30% of the time. The project uses a multi-layered convolutional neural network to accurately predict PD and leverages MRI scans from Parkinson's Progression Makers Initiative, or PPMI, which is a publicly available and highly trusted resource. I source my data from PPMI, as I said before, and I use scans of the human brain, with the acquisition plane being axial, meaning top-down view, and the modality is magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, and the research groups are Parkinson's disease and the control group. And MRI scans have slices, so I had about 50,000 slices I worked with. And the results for my project was I chose slice 2 as the best slice. I had a 98 to 99% validation accuracy, a 0.0011 validation loss, or 0.11%. This was over 250 epochs with a 0.5 second single prediction time, a 1 minute training time. And here's the data I have for all my slices, with slice 2 highlighted as the best slice, with notes about single prediction. And I ran into problems such as the data I needed to download being in multiple tabs, which would have taken weeks to manually download. So what I did to solve that was to make a Python bot that would automatically do it for me. And another challenge I ran into was that I needed to convert all my images from DCM to JPEG, and that would have taken around like a year to do manually. I did the math, and with the Python bot, it only took about half a week. So those are a couple of challenges I faced, and the goals for my project were to diagnose at an early stage, to provide a cheap diagnosis, and have it available to the general public, and diagnose with the accuracy above 90%.
Okay, thank you, Aryaman. We're opening 2 minutes to the audience for any questions. Okay, I don't think we have any questions. So Aryaman, thank you again for presenting. And before we move on to our next presenter, I think I want to welcome the audience. So welcome to the third elevator pitch of today's symposium. My name is Berenice Estrada. I'm currently studying at the University of Paris, and I'm moderating today's talk. The goal of the symposium is to celebrate and showcase the hard work of our Polygen scholars, all of whom have tirelessly worked on their projects over the past couple of months. We have 7 students presenting on a variety of topics today, and a fellow Polygen's mentor will be scoring each of the students' presentation, which will help us determine prize winners after the event. During the Q&A session, please type your questions in the chat if you have any, and we will allow 2 minutes for Q&A. Okay. And with that, thank you, Aryaman, again. And our next speaker is Yanni Larsen.
Okay. All right. Hello, my name is Yanni Larsen. As someone who grew up in 2 distinctive cultures, I struggled to really understand how to define my own identity and how to use my cultures in order to shape my own life. And I always used to ask myself why my relationship with my parents was so different in comparison to my monoracial friends. So as I grew up, I realized that the experiences of other biracial individuals was completely unique to themselves. So I created a documentary that explores the psychology behind how biculturalism affects the relationships that parents have with their children, as well as to further the ideas of what fundamentally connects all bicultural people. So I conducted interviews with 4 distinctive families, each of unique cultural background. Throughout this set of interviews, I pieced together 4 core aspects as to how biculturalism affects not only self-identification of biracial people, but how it uniquely shapes the relationship that these people have with their parents. The 4 main facets that I discovered were language, culture, familial tension, and discrimination, and how it impacts parent-child relationships. Whether parents chose to spread their native culture and tongue to their children, how parents racially socialize their children, how the parents' biracial relationship affected extended familial tension, and how discrimination affected the overall family dynamic. The documentary provides valuable insight into how parents who are raising their children in bicultural households should racially socialize their children, as well as it also spreads awareness to the overall biracial experience. So just to discuss the impact of the overall documentary, the documentary made an impact within my own local community. It was shown for the District Cultural Responsiveness Committee, and it was shared with my overall school board. And it was shown to my high school principal in order to spread awareness of just biculturality and just, a lot of racial issues. Additionally, the documentary is shown to all theory of knowledge classes at my own school, as well as history classes in order to teach the impact. The documentary shows a glimpse into the experiences of a very, very fast growing population, especially within the United States of America. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yanni. We're opening the floor for questions from the audience. I hear no questions from the audience, but I have a question myself. So during your time studying this, Yanni, what connections did you find between all the 4 points that you mentioned? So language, culture, family connections, and discrimination.
Yeah, a lot of them are very intersectional. A lot of them blend together. For instance, just to name an example, language and culture. A lot of the times what we found is, for instance, I talked to a Japanese American family, which was half white, half Japanese. And I interviewed 2 Japanese American families. And in one, they taught Japanese to their kids. And in that family, we found a lot of Japanese culture, a lot of, heavily racial socialization within their children. And it was really awesome. And then it was in comparison to another Japanese American family that I interviewed where they didn't share the Japanese language. And in turn, they also didn't share much of their Japanese culture and ideas. So a lot of it was found that a lot of them intertwine and a lot of them have a lot to do with each other. And so if some parents choose not to do one, they may not choose to do another one in that same context.
All right, awesome. Thank you for answering my question. And thank you for presenting. So next up we have Michael.
My name is Michael Hom, and the project which my mentor Sam and I are working on is a handwriting transcription website geared to improve the unique ability to translate handwritten notes into computerized text. Currently, handwritten transcription services are put behind a paywall, but with my website, the services can be more accessible. We use the library Tesseract.js to provide a baseline for the voice recognition software. Then the output could be corrected using the frequency of English words database and an English dictionary to judge whether the original guess was accurate and probable. Here is the current layout of my website. I'm currently working on improving the user interface and experience. Currently, the user can input their own image and make quick adjustments to the output if needed. The link to my website is shown, I don't know, they put in the chat, but there is still quite a bit that needs to be done.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Does the audience have any questions? We have 2 minutes. Okay, we have a question from Alex Armstrong. To Michael, why was this interesting to you?
This just found some applications as I currently go to school, and I find that there's a service called the Note Taker, which writes notes for students that need it, and I found that this could be helpful in that section, and my handwriting's kind of messy, so it could be practical for me as well.
All right, and we have a question from Aryaman. What challenges or problems did you encounter while working on your project?
It was pretty difficult fine tuning the frequency or the value of frequency to the importance of a word, that the likelihood of the word. That was probably the most difficult bit.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, again, thank you, Michael, once again for your presentation. And up next we have Samarth. So please put up your presentation.
All right, so hi, my name is Samarth Pasala, and my project is about making investing easier for everyone. Many people in the world are into the stock market as they see it as a way to make passive income, both in the short and long run. However, many people don't have the time to sit around and watch the stock market daily. Taking this into account, I believe that creating a free application that analyzes the stock market and provides the user with easy to understand and valuable information on specific companies can help them save a significant amount of money and time. Overall, my project was based around the question of, is there a simple and efficient method to code an application that helps people that are new to the stock market by giving them options on where to invest based on their risk tolerance and investment horizon? When doing research for how I was going to structure my code for the project, I found that if people were more okay with the risk, they would want to invest more in the long term. And on the other hand, if they were not as keen to risk, they would want to invest more in the short term. So as a result of the research, the method I used for coding the project was taking in user input of how much the user has to invest, how okay they are with the risk, and if they want to make a short or long-term investment. Based on this input, the program will generate a list of 3 companies that the user should invest in to achieve the best return. The program will generate and produce 3 graphs of the company's historical stock growth, which is imported from Yahoo Finance, so that the user could visually see the investment they are making. Additionally, the program will do some calculations in the background and present the user with an estimate as to their expected return and how much money they should expect to have both in 5 and 10 years. The output to the code will give the user their return rate and expected return for both the short and long run, so they can see the impact for themselves for investing for that period of time and make the decision on their own. In future iterations of the code, I plan to use portfolio theory to determine exactly how much money a user should invest in different stocks so they can attain the best return for the lowest amount of risk and protect themselves against the unpredictability of the stock market. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samarth. Do we have any questions from the audience? We have a question from Alex. Thank you, Alex. Samarth, is there an ethical consideration with your proposal?
Yeah, so it was mainly about like just in my life, like I always wanted to get into investing, but like it's super kind of hard to like learn everything, especially with like the different things I have to do in my life. Like school is like a major obstacle and different like extracurriculars and stuff like that. So learning about the stock market is a long process. Learning about the different types of stocks, such as bonds and different stocks such as that, will take a long time to process. So like I thought like just creating an application that just takes a website such as Yahoo Finance that does everything in the background by itself would be an easy way, just taking data from that company and putting it into like a specific code that can call different stocks would be an easy way for people like just know where to invest without having to spend hours analyzing the stock market and changes in data.
All right, thank you for your answer. I have a question myself. your project, what advantages do you foresee it having over, let's say, programs that exist already, like KuCoin?
Yeah, the advantage is mostly just like it's constantly updating, right? So it's in the background, it's like taking historical stock data from like I think up to 15 to 20 years ago of that company's stock growth and then presenting estimates as to expected return, and it will constantly update. So if one time a user goes into the app and they see like their expected return to be 15% up, they can go in the next day and see an immediate change, or like just maybe 10 minutes later if the stock something happens to that company, they like stock changes, stock prices go up or down, the app will like tell them, hey, it's a good time to invest, or here's your new expected return rate. Whereas other like websites such as you mentioned, they don't do that type of thing.
Okay, thank you for your answer. That's all the time we have for questions for Samarth. And our next presenter is Shivani.
Hi everyone, my name is Shivani Jayaprakasam. What are the best psychological treatment approaches for children experiencing memory-related trauma after natural disasters? Natural disasters affect more than 200 million people per year. Historically, the U.S. emergency response system has not provided psychological support to communities impacted by these disasters. Emphasizing psychological intervention and treatment after disasters is essential, as mental health is necessary for individuals to lead normal lives. Children require special attention and a different treatment approach to ensure that trauma impacts on children are not long-lasting and prevalent in future adult life. I studied various research techniques and popular psychological databases to evaluate the best treatment and the best effects of trauma, and I created a literary review. Through the exploration of existing treatment approaches for traumatic memory disorders in children, I highlighted a lack of effective psychological treatments for children post-natural disaster trauma. Ideal trauma treatments after natural disasters, scalable, efficient, and evidence-based, are inadequate in children. Currently, the best treatment for youth is TFCBT, or trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which has the highest success rate for lowering anxiety and depression. But there are lots of limitations with this treatment. Additionally, I found that studies were highly limited for highly vulnerable populations like children at high risk of suicidal or violent behaviors, developmental disabilities, and psychosis or substance abuse. Currently, the world is in the midst of a global pandemic, which has highlighted the need for mental health services. It's more crucial than ever to conduct more research into the effectiveness of new mental health treatment approaches in children and other missing populations from past case studies of memory and PTSD-related disorders post-natural disasters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Shivani. We are opening the floor to the audience for any questions. My apologies. Okay. I see no questions in the chat, but I have a question, Shivani, for you. Do you know the range of expertise within like the psychology field between like therapists? Like how many of these people are trained in TF, CBT?
So different psychological treatments require different amounts of training, and that's one of the biggest difficulties in the field of psychology, actually, is that not a lot of people are trained in specifically pediatric treatments. So TFCBT, a specific type of treatment, requires a different type of training than a group therapy would, or an adult therapy like regular CBT would have. And so these different types of trainings is what makes it so difficult to have a widespread impact. And that's one of those things that needs more research in the field in the future. And that's why TFCBT, although it's the most common in pediatrics, it also requires a lot more research, and that there needs to be a lot more research in this field taking place. Because if we have some kind of common field of some common treatment or a common kind of like a very compartmentalized list of like different types of trainings and who can get that training, there would be a much more efficient way of providing this treatment to populations, especially vulnerable populations like children.
Okay, and we have room for one more question from Alex. Thank you, Alex. Who needs to be convinced for this to be adopted?
I think the biggest people that need to be convinced are the medical field and the psychological field. Currently, there's not a lot of research being done into these vulnerable populations. And when I was doing research and I just began with general research about psychology, I found that, first of all, these populations of children themselves had less potential research case studies. And then even less case studies were done specifically for natural disasters. So bigger governmental organizations like FEMA, for example, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, if they're convinced that there needs to be more research being done into these type of treatment approaches, they'd be able to provide funding to the research organizations who are able to focus on research like this. And like I said, COVID-19 right now, it's a great example of a pandemic that there obviously isn't much research being done. And if there is an opportunity and a window of opportunity to be able to conduct more research into these vulnerable populations, now would be the time to convince populations. And that's what I hope to do with my literary review.
Thank you for your answer, Shivani. On to the next person, we have Aman. So Aman, please take the stage.
She's still sharing her screen.
Here's that help. Okay.
All right, thank you, Shivani.
Can you see it now? Okay. So, hello, my name is Aman Reddy, and I'm a junior at Lake Travis High School. This is a review paper on the prophylaxis and treatment of COVID-19. I originally made it to catalog all the different treatment and prevention methods that are currently being used to treat and prevent the disease, but eventually it moved into researching more about the treatments that were experimented on for further use against the SARS-CoV-2 virus. There's a lot of conflicting information on the internet about this virus and how to fight it, so I thought it'd be useful to organize all the information that was proven true. This paper reaches a broad variety of treatments, such as vaccines, antibodies, plasma therapy, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and more. First, it discusses the history and theories surrounding the theories of origin surrounding COVID-19, and then it discusses the treatments used against the disease. It talks about the effects that each of these treatments have against the body, and if there are strong candidates as being used as additional treatments on the disease. Each of the vaccines are compared with each other in terms of efficiency and availability, as well as long-term immunity. The experimental treatments are compared in terms of safety and practicality, as well as efficiency against COVID-19 and its symptoms. This paper is important because it provides a non-biased database of information about many treatments and allows readers to accurately judge the strengths and weaknesses of each of them.
Okay, thank you, Aman. We have 2 minutes for questions. We're opening it to the audience. Thank you, Alex.
So the thing that surprised me the most about doing this work is that while this is a relatively new disease, there are a lot of treatments for this. In fact, this is probably the #1 disease that has been researched around the world in the past couple of years, and there's a surprising amount of data on it for the amount of time that it's been around. I had to search through around, I think, 3 dozen different researched papers to find the information for this paper, and a lot of that data is really significant.
Okay, any other questions? I think we'll move on to the next person, the next presenter that we have today. So thank you, Aman, for presenting. And up next we have Anna.
Good afternoon, my name is Anna Bucevic, and I'm here today to talk to you about my research into mussels and how they can be used in pollution remediation efforts. In my research, I focused on the impact of microplastics. Microplastics are small pieces of plastic debris less than 5 millimeters in length. They result from the degradation of macroplastic waste that ends up in our oceans due to things like runoff. These microplastics are detrimental to our health as people and also to the greater marine ecosystem. These particles have been linked to endocrine disruption, oxidative stress, and changes in energy metabolism. These health concerns serve as a significant motivation for research into potential management systems. I believe in the value of biological solutions. To explain, there is an immense value in setting up systems where the environment can act to heal itself. This is important because human interference always runs the risk of unintended consequences such as invasive species or ecological disruption. Mussels were a compelling candidate for a large-scale filtration mechanism as they are sessile and filter feeders. Since they don't move, they are easy to locate and store. Meanwhile, their filter mechanisms can easily be adapted to capture microplastics from continuing to inhabit the water, as mussels filter microplastics similar to the way they digest their food molecules. While this was promising in the beginning, my literature review found that a large-scale filter run by the mussels was unfeasible. Firstly, it would greatly harm the mussels. Second, it runs the risk of human consumption. And finally, the amount of mussels a project like this would require is astronomical. However, it was found that mussels have immense potential to serve as indicator species. This would enable them to monitor the microplastic concentrations of their environment and give relative concentration indications. That all being said, there is limited subject material available, especially considering microplastics themselves have only been around for half a century. Mussels may still yet have the spotlight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Anna, for the presentation. We have 2 minutes for questions from the audience.
So when they filter things, part of the problem with this particular solution is actually 80% of the microplastics eventually do get cleared. They can be stored in the soft tissues for about a month and a half before clearance, and the other 20% just stay in the soft tissues.
We have more questions in the chat. Alex followed up with, where do the 80% go? 80% of the microplastics.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't see that. So a lot of the time, the particles are actually trapped in the sediments in the ground because they're deposited with the rest of the mussels' waste in pseudofeces. So it is better because it's not as much in the water being circulated, but it is still trapped in the sediments and can be dug up by ground animals.
And then we have a comment from the audience. Anna, I recently saw a video of silica gel being used to form clumps of the microplastics. Might be something to look into. The microplastics clumps were removed using physical filtration.
That's an interesting concept, and I do have actually seen a similar video. I do think that's an important thing to look into. I just liked the idea of mussels as they are animals, and therefore it doesn't really need as much human moderation once they're put into practice. And as for the following question that kind of relates to if it's safe to where they're local or not native to, that is one of the limitations, because actually there was a case recently in northern Italy with the zebra mussels where they put them in for, I think, farming to eat, and they became an invasive species that messed up the ecosystem there.
Thank you, Anna, for answering the questions, and thank you for your presentation. We have heard presentations from all the students. I think that may be all the time we have. We're going to wrap up a little bit early. But once again, thank you to all the students. Thank you for presenting your work, and congratulations to you for making it this far. You should be proud of yourselves, and yeah, good job. Okay, thank you everybody for attending, and have a wonderful rest of the day.